gentlemen, on the count of 3, turn to the person next to you and tell them to shh. 1, 2, 3. Shh. And please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Northern Virginians, countrymen and West Virginians, please lend me your ears tonight this on the Ides of March. We gather here tonight not to praise Pat Mullins, but to bury him. Would you please lend your ears now to our friend Brutus, otherwise known as Frank Wolf, our wonderful congressman from the 10th District of Virginia, and the bane of Hillary Clinton's existence. He will signal the beginning of the festivities with a special welcome. Congressman Frank Wolf, please come on up.
Well, I want to begin by welcoming you, since that's what I said that I was going to do. They asked me to make a couple comments about Pat. I'm not going to be a roaster. In fact, as I have found to be a roaster is very, very stressful. The other times that I've agreed to do it, I would go home and go through it with my wife, Carolyn, and try to see if I were funny. And sometimes I would be funny, and sometimes I would not. More than likely, I would not. I also remember the last time we did a roast, I believe it was not in this hotel, but in this shopping center. My telephone from the press rang for about a week, if you recall. That was about 2.5 or 3 years ago, when there was a roast for Stan Paris. And so I'm not roasting, I'm just here to welcome you, but also to make a couple of personal comments with regard to Pat in tribute. In the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes 3, it says there is a time for everything, and Pat has decided that it is a time for him to move on. We respect that. Pat has served us well for a long time. He has served Fairfax County well. He has served our Republican Party well, and by being a staunch, articulate, and fearless, and at times aggressive advocate for us and for what we believe in, Pat has served us very, very well. He has mastered the political process and has participated with enthusiasm and gusto. He has shirked no part of it. He has never shied away from the difficult or the thorny or the delicate, and quite frankly, many times has stepped on people's toes who haven't quite seen eye to eye with Pat. I'm reluctant to, but I want to do this in a serious way. One of my favorite speeches is the speech that Bobby Kennedy gave in Cape Town, South Africa in 1966. In that speech, Bobby Kennedy talked about the dangers facing those who would assume positions of public leadership. He said one of the dangers about what he spoke about is being timid. He said, and I quote, "Few men are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the censure of their colleagues, and the wrath of their society." He went on to say that moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence. Yet it is one of the essential, vital qualities of those who seek to change the world. Pat has been that type of person. Timidity is not a word that anyone would use if they know Pat to describe him, but courage is. Willingness to brave the disapproval of others, perhaps quite sincerely, a number of us in this room on certain occasions. There were those in the party that sometimes would get upset with Pat for particular decisions that he would make. But part of the success that we have here in Fairfax County would not have been possible without his strength, his force, and his willingness to stand up for his beliefs in the face of all things scathing opposition. I can remember, quite frankly, when the lines changed, not knowing what the circumstances would be. I called Pat on the phone to tell him that there was great pressure for me. If those of you can remember, to me it seems like just the other day, everyone wanted me to move. It was the house that we had lived in for many, many years. I told people that we even had bluebird boxes in the backyard, and all of my kids had their own bedrooms, and everyone said, "The lines have changed, you should move." And I didn't want to move, and we called a meeting of my family, and we all decided, I told my kids we weren't going to move. And I called Pat and to ask him, and he said, you shouldn't move, and I want you to know that no matter what happens and no matter who runs, I will support you and stand behind you. I appreciated that very, very much, because much of the area that I was getting was very new, and Fairfax County was my base. And it was an area that if there was going to be something happening, I had to do very, very well. I'm sure others remember. Earl Williams remember that Pat stood with him. Ollie North remembers that Pat stood with him. Tom Davis remembers that Pat stood with him. And I would say, Pat, and as others know, that if you have a friend in Pat Mullins, you have a friend for life. And I'm pleased to be here to salute Pat and to thank him personally for the help that he's given me over the number of years. Although Pat has never lived in my congressional district, I have gone to him for help over the many, many years. He's always been there for other candidates, and he's always been there for our party. A party's chief aim is to elect its candidates. If our choices don't win, our values are not articulated, our programs are not implemented, and our ideas and visions really don't come to anything. The winners, as we know, set the course. The losers can at best only say, I told you so. With Pat at the helm of the party, we have won, and we have won consistently. With Pat at the helm of the party, we have grown larger. Our slate of candidates has expanded, and we have done well. This would not have had taken place without Pat. He has brought together young and old, men and women, all races, all ethnic backgrounds, and people from all walks of life together for the principles of the Republican Party in a determination that if we work together and work hard, our ideas and our visions will prevail. In closing, let me just cover a quote. One of my favorite quotes was the quote by Teddy Roosevelt called "The Doer." I took great constellation in that because, as many of you know, when I ran in 1976, I lost, and then ran in 1978, and I lost. But if you know the words of Teddy Roosevelt's poem, "The Doer," he talks about those who are in the arena of life with the blood and the sweat and the toil, and he goes on to say this. It talks about a person who spends himself in a worthy cause, and at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither defeat nor victory. Clearly, Pat Mullins' place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither defeat nor victory. Pat has had a share of defeat when he's been involved in some of these things, but he's had a large portion of victory. And personally, Pat, on behalf of my family and on behalf of the help and you being there in some difficult times, on behalf of the candidates that you helped, on behalf of the Republican Party, we say thank you, and we give the best to you and to your wife Jackie and to your family, and say God bless. We wish you the very, very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Congressman Wolf. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the last funny thing that will be said tonight. We tried hard, frankly, to assemble all of Pat's friends to come up with this roast, and just look at this dais. That's it. Eat your dinner and enjoy. No. We'll move on. If you would please stand for the invocation, which will be led by one of Pat's pastors, the Reverend Wendell Golden, the Associate Pastor of Annandale United Methodist Church. And if you all know, if Pastor Golden would please come on up. If you all know from some of the ill-informed reporters in Northern Virginia that the Annandale United Methodist Church is the source of all strength of the religious rights political activity in Virginia, because Pat Mullins is there. And if you would please remain standing at the conclusion of the prayer.
We count it an honor to have Pat as a member of our congregation. He's active every Sunday. We always look for him. Let us pray. Loving God, creator of everything that is good and beautiful, we pause to seek your blessings for this special occasion. We are here to recognize in a fun and relaxing way the good works and gentle spirit of our friend and colleague, Pat Mullins. We want to give honor where honor is due to the many elected officials and friends here this evening. You created us as a God-fearing nation. Help us to live lives as God-fearing leaders of the greatest nation on earth. We thank you for the good food that has been prepared, for we live in a world where there are many people who are hungry. We are blessed and we are grateful. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Reverend Golden. There are no rules that would bind us, unlike the NBA, but I don't believe this group will have any trouble remaining standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. Our pledge will be led by Sterling Epps, the third Vice Chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Committee. Sterling, if you would come forward, and the National Anthem will be performed by Miss Dawn Smith, a senior at Falls Church High School. And this will be preceded by the presentation of colors by the Sheriff's Honor Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, to your attention to the back of the room.
Breathe and on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Miss Dawn Smith here? There she comes. Thank you very much.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave
Thank you very much. If you would please be seated. I'd like, if you would offer me a moment to offer a personal word of introduction for this event. My name is Kevin Gentry. I'm the first vice chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Committee. I have been I think what I need to do is every now and then revert to Pat Mullins style and say, all right, y'all, if you're going to talk, go in the back of the room or go outside. For further purposes of introduction, if y'all would indulge me for about 10 seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead with the dinner. Many of you have been loyal and dutiful foot soldiers in Pat Mullins' wonderful brigades over these years, and I too am one of those, and I've agreed to serve tonight as Pat's Master of Ceremonies. And I want to tell you all that a few weeks ago, in one of the local newspapers, one of Supervisor Sharon Bulova's appointees wrote a letter to the editor attacking Pat and others, and me, calling me a doppelganger. A doppelganger. And as someone who considers himself to be a traditional values conservative, or as maybe the Washington Post would refer to as someone who is poor, uneducated, and easily led, I was a little bit appalled by such obscene language, and so I rushed to the dictionary to look up doppelganger. Anybody in here know what a doppelganger is? A doppelganger, according to Webster's dictionary, is a ghostly apparition of an evil living person. And I was Pat Mullins' doppelganger. So I'm going to endeavor tonight to use his gavel from time to time to bring you all to order, and when necessary, indulge in a little bit of a West Virginia accent. But as we continue, folks, I have some news for you. The most difficult part of this organization, of this event, has been putting up with Pat Mullins. Gwen Cody and I have this week fielded no less than 50 phone calls from Pat at odd hours of the night, asking who was coming, how many were coming, was anybody going to say anything funny, were the media going to be here, always an important question for Pat. Tonight he pulled me aside just after the reception, though. He said, everything is going well, but I'm a little upset you didn't have my favorite hors d'oeuvre. Of course, his favorite West Virginia hors d'oeuvre is potted meat on a saltine cracker. And I'm sorry we couldn't accommodate you there, Pat, but y'all please go ahead and dig into that bread, and hopefully the food will be served soon. But let me please tell you that if you didn't already know, Pat and Jackie are going to be leaving us soon and moving to Louisa County, Virginia, down by Lake Anna, the small, quaint town of Bumpus, or as Pat, in his wonderful ways of pronouncing words, says, Bump-ass. Well, I looked into it, and there is a Bumpus general store, and they're very big on nutrition, as we are here tonight, and they're big on promoting the nutritional value of their products. And Pat, you're going to be looking forward to the Bumpus general store, because they say that if you get a beef jerky and a moon pie, it covers 3 of the 4 basic food groups. Y'all enjoy your dinner. We'll be back a little bit later. Thank you.
Good evening. As Kevin said, I'm Pat's son-in-law, and the reason I was the family member chosen to speak tonight is quite easy. The rest of my family is far quicker than I am, and I'm the one who got stuck holding the microphone. Honored to be asked to write something for Pat. I had written something for our wedding to his daughter. I didn't even think Pat knew about it until he asked me to write this thing. Being asked by your father-in-law to publicly bash your father-in-law is almost too funny for words. Almost too funny for words. With the ample assistance from my wife, who helped me through some of the rough spots, we put together this little poem for Pat. It follows the theme of a visit from St. Nicholas, and we call it a visit from the chairman. 'Twas the night before his retirement, and all through the city, People wondered what to feel for the chairman. Perhaps pity? The planners of the roast conspired in pairs. After years of abuse, vengeance would soon be theirs. Even the chairman was resigned to his fate, but happier thoughts were dancing across his thinning pate. For out in the country, bump-ass would he dwell. Four-wheeling, kicking headlights, life would be swell. He thought about simple things in great anticipation. He could finally retire the pastel suits that caused such consternation. But something was not right. In his head there arose such a clatter. He lumbered from his bed to address the matter. He tripped over the dog who was snoring like mad and stopped to wonder what kind of watchdog he had. What a man needed in the country are good hunting mutts, not a lapdog who's too small to climb out of the ruts. And suddenly it hit him like a bolt from the blue. In this peaceful country he envisioned there was no trouble to brew. No posts, no times, no journal to serve as his foil. In bump-ass, the front page is reserved for the cure of a boil. Rotary luncheons would fill a meal during the weeks, but Domino's doesn't deliver. Better talk to Frank Meeks. All day watching sports from a satellite dish, but who would he tell? It was just he and the fish. No, I need a fix. Like Republican meetings, some people bashing, some warm friendly greetings. Now more rapid than eagles his thoughts they came. He started dialing the phone and calling each name. Now Ollie, now Earl, now John and Frank. On George, on Tom, on Coleman, and bring the bank. Quick to the Forest Street, to the house at the end. Indulge your aged chairman in one last bend. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the house these leaders they flew, each with a sack of cash and some puzzled looks too. Pat jumped each time he heard the bell. More people, more cash, his plan was starting to gel. He smiled when he saw this level of support. They were all there, even the guy Pat took to court. His eyes, how they twinkled, his chins, how merry. Yes, this would be right. This would be his cherry. My friends, he intoned as he stood on the table, I have a plan for which I am ready, willing, and able. We've worked hard and won the governor's mansion, something we wouldn't surrender for any ransom. What better way to guarantee our heaven than to nominate me for governor in '97? Well, there was a trickle of laughter that entered the room. That trickle quickly turned into a monsoon. George Allen laughed so hard he swallowed his chew. John Warner fell out of his chair and ruined his due. Earl Williams laughed so hard his eyes rolled to the sky. And poor Tom Davis almost choked on his pie. No, wait, hear me out, Pat said. There's nothing to fear, nothing to dread. He laid out his platform plank by plank. Each town would have a stadium of major league rank. He would banish Carolina Blue from appearing in the state, and all meetings that conflicted with basketball would be held at a later date. One by one, the guffaws came to a stop. Soon the room was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. That's more like it, he thought as he told them more. Yet he noticed a dog scurrying out the back door. He quickly dismissed that thought and picked up his theme. Got to keep moving, can't lose the steam. What Pat did not realize was that in the back of his home, he had awakened his bride, who was having retirement dreams of her own. And now, reluctantly aroused from her slumber, she was heading down the hall with a great piece of lumber. Upon hearing of Pat's political dream, she didn't know whether to swing, cry, or scream. You promised, you said that was all you could take. It was time for you and for me and the grandkids down at the lake. But Pat was still fired up on his gubernatorial dream. Jackie, can't you see? It's me they need to lead the team. Shaking her head in frustration, with steam coming from her nose, Jackie swung her bat and quickly up the chimney Pat rose. Republicans ran to put their face to the glass, just in time to see Pat roll off the roof and out to the grass. Jackie ran down, grabbed some rope and tied him up tight, and stared at the Republicans who had stumbled into the night. Without a word, she opened the car door and gave them a whistle. Obediently, they tossed Pat in. Away he flew like a thistle. I'm taking him to the lake. You can't have him anymore. With that, she huffed and slammed the car door. The Republicans were quiet, their eyes cast down. Governor Allen stepped forward, his face in a frown. Jackie, if you move to that little slice of heaven, who will be our nominee for governor in '97? I said, you can't have him, she said with conviction. With that, she called for the dogs who were, as always, in the kitchen. You misunderstand, Senator Warner slept in. We don't want Pat, he's a has-been. It's you we need to take us to the next century. A woman of conviction, a woman of ferocity. A startled look settled on Jackie's face. A spark of glee soon took its place. Up the stairs she ran and packed her bags. The dogs tried to follow, but soon even they lagged. With blinding speed, she prepared for her new life. I'm going to be the governor, not the governor's wife. As she led the convoy out to the road, neighbors straggled out to whisper and goad. And they heard her exclaim ere she drove out of sight, they picked me, me. They finally got it right.
Now, for the purposes of some introductions, I'd like to call up here Delegate Bob Harris, our Fairfax County Republican Party Treasurer Tessie Wilson, Supervisor Mike Fry, and our second Vice Chairman Gwen Cody.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a high honor for me this evening to introduce the elected officials that are present with us this evening. We have a number of distinguished dignitaries here that will be introduced later in the program as well. First of all, let me ask all of the elected officials just to stand up as I call your name. Respectfully hold your applause till the end. We'll give everybody a rounding cheer at the end. First of all, I'd like to introduce Senator John Warner, Attorney General Jim Gilmore, Congressman Frank Wolf, Congressman Tom Davis, from the Board of Supervisors, Elaine McConnell, Stu Mendelson, Bob Dix, and Michael Fry, and the constitutional officers of Fairfax, Sheriff Carl Peed, and the Clerk of the Court, John Fry, and Patsy Drain, Electoral Board Secretary, and from the General Assembly, Senator Jane Woods, Delegate Dick Fisher, Delegate Jim O'Brien, Jay O'Brien, and Delegate Bill Mims, and Tom Russ, the Mayor of Herndon. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Cast of characters certainly shows the vitality of the Republican Party. Thank you for coming tonight.
Tessie Wilson's going to introduce our executive committee of the Fairfax Republican Party. Tessie, come on up. Carol Archibald, you're next to introduce the candidates that are here tonight. And then the Honorable Gwen Cody, come on up here.
Good evening. I am treasurer of the Fairfax County Republican Party, and at the moment I would like to offer our chairman, Pat Mullins, a public apology. Pat, I'm terribly sorry that I filed the Fairfax County Republican Committee's campaign disclosure forms for the state of Virginia. Had I known, like our Democratic counterparts, that we could have gotten away without doing them, I never would have filed them. I'd now like to introduce the members of the Fairfax County Republican Committee Board. If you could stand as I call your name and hold your applause until we're all done. Kevin Gentry, first Vice Chairman, who you've already met. Gwen Cody, our second Vice Chairman. Sterling Epps, third Vice Chairman. T.R. Cook, Chairman, Hunter Mill District. Corky Medaglia, Lee District. Eugene Delgadio, Mason District. Rick Neal, Chairman, Mount Vernon District. Carol Archibald, Secretary. Prudence Parks, General Counsel. Steve Mullins, Finance Chair. The Honorable Bob Harris, elected official representative to the board. Caroline Coriel, 10th Congressional District Representative. And I'd also like to add that there were a few names submitted from the program as members of the host committee, if they could also stand. Bob Dively, Fairfax County Board of Zoning Appeals. The Honorable Tom Rust, Mayor of Herndon, and the Honorable Bill Mims, member of the Virginia House of Delegates. Thank you.
I will be introducing candidates, so if you will please stand as I call your name. Jim Miller, former director of OMB for President Ronald Reagan, candidate for United States Senate from Virginia. Rick Neal, candidate for chairman, 8th District Republican Committee. Kevin Sabo, candidate for chairman, 11th District Republican Committee. Jean Marie Devilites, candidate for chairman, Fairfax County Republican Committee. Bob Lee, candidate for chairman, Fairfax County Republican Committee. James Parmalee, candidate for chairman, Fairfax County Republican Committee. Joe Underwood, former chairman, Braddock District Republican Committee, candidate for chairman, Fairfax County Republican Committee. Gil Davis, attorney extraordinaire representing Paula Jones versus Bill Clinton, 1997 candidate for Attorney General of Virginia. And George Atwood, past district governor of the Rotary, candidate mayor of Leesburg.
I'm glad I'm not running for office again, because I would never get reelected or elected. I've made so many people unhappy. So many more wanted to come. Let me talk to you about the distinguished people who are here tonight. Dr. Butler is here from the athletic department, and he is the past district chairman of Rotary. Rotary is an organization that has a round thing like this, like maybe on a boat. Just for fun, let's see how many of you here. All the Rotary people stand up. Come on, up, up, up. Don't be ashamed, come on. Okay. I've been told I gotta speed it up, but I want you to see what a nice looking group of men. Jim McConville, he wouldn't give me a check, but we got him in without using a check. And then we have Chris Fox, the past president of the Annandale Chamber of Commerce. We have a woman judge, Judge Lorraine Norland. Where is that one? She's been nominated. Where are you? She says she won't fix any tickets, so forget it. Jack, go and help you a bit. Ray Venator, the district governor of Rotary District 7610. Pete Petro, the past district governor of Rotary. And where is Dr. Bernie Zeben? Is he here? Where? Hi Bernie. Dr. Henry Dutson, is he here? Dr. Dutson, where are you? Dr. Dutson, do you know he fixed Frank Meek's teeth? He's his dentist. It's important that you know these things. Mr. Ralph Rocks. Where are you, Mr. Rocks? He has been my Santa Claus since I have been on the executive board. He has always come through. Where is he? Do you see him, Dr. Rocks? Well, maybe we tired him out, but he is a wonderful supporter. Walt Barbie, he is president of the Family Foundation. Where are you, Walt? There you are. Okay. Arnie, he keeps saying speed up, but you all have done so much for us. You're like Pat. You caught it from him. Arnie Quirian is our host for tonight. He is the manager of this hotel. Did he give us a deal? And Jack Hardy sent me to him and said, let's make a deal. Larry Buckner, where is that sweetheart? Are you here, Larry? He is a Republican extraordinaire and a great supporter, and he has a son who's following in the same tradition. Where's Buddy? Buddy? All right. And Jim Stevens. Where are you, Jim? Are you here tonight? Jim? When Pat came from West Virginia in a covered wagon, he went to Maryland, and the first person who hired him was this man, and I don't know whether it was a good decision. He's from Maryland, and he's a great guy. And Juanita Ballinger, she's on the governor's staff. Where are you, Juanita? She's our star. She is our star. And Tim Phillips, are you here with that little kid named Barney? Where are you, Tim? You here? Hey, Barney. He hates me to call him Barney, and we're almost finished. This evening, we have an extraordinary man with us.
Speak into the microphone.
This evening, we have an extraordinary man with us. I don't know how he has survived these 70-some years, but he has. And he is the dad of Pat Mullins. Please stand up. Okay.
You know, we've introduced so many people, various elected officials, candidates. Is Marshall Coleman here? Is Marshall Coleman here? Maybe he must be out back. We'll introduce him later on. Let's get on with the roast. Here are the ground rules. There is, believe it or not, a time limit for each speaker.
And we don't know what it is, but it
This is the warning, and this means time is up. And anytime someone says something that may be construed by the Washington Compost as being politically incorrect, you're going to get that. Our first roaster, that, by the way, all those political correctness warnings apply mostly to Pat Mullins. Our first speaker, our first roaster, is none other than Lieutenant Colonel Oliver L. North, United States Marine Corps retired. Now, to begin with this and the introduction, and having just realized we'd be better off with all of our roasters up here, I'm going to ask Colonel North and the rest of the roasters to please come up and take your seats with the name tags up here at the table. We have also, come on up, Mr. Mullins, you're over here, down at that end.
I thought all these seats were for Pat's friends.
That's what we already talked about.
That's why they're empty.
Yeah. You know, there's not much I can say about Ollie North that perhaps Senator Warner hasn't already said. But seriously, I have a feeling this is going to be a very raucous event tonight. You know, Pat is famous for dishing out his free political advice, and he has been a key campaign advisor to so many good candidates, witnessed so many stunning defeats in Fairfax County over the past several years. One of the big things that Pat has pushed, and many of you know this, for whatever reason, he tells us every time there's a state convention that the Dickinson County delegation in Southwest Virginia is made up all of Mullins's, all his distant relatives. This is true. A lot of things we say tonight might not be true, but this is a true story. Now, he brags about these Mullinses down there, and he wants always to send candidates down there to get support from them. And during the 1994 campaign, Pat counseled Ollie North to go down to Dickinson County so that he could win Southwest Virginia. Now, Ollie should have gotten a little concerned when first the direction said, turn off the paved road. The second warning should have been that while there were no window curtains in the houses, there were curtains in the trucks. But the disaster occurred, and this is why Ollie lost the race and lost Southwest Virginia and lost Dickinson County, I believe, is when he got to the appointed address, the home of Pat Mullins' relative who controlled the vote in Southwest Virginia. He stepped up on the front porch, the porch collapsed, and killed all the hound dogs that were sleeping underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Oliver North.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to get that off there before it gets spilled. Boy, you got a lot of nerve standing next to me. You're going to be in the Washington Post on Monday. Think about that. The last time I was here at a roast, and it was in this room, I believe, wasn't it, Pat? Where's Pat?
Yeah, right to your left.
To my left. That's where you belong, Mullins. I'm just getting started. I believe it was right here in this room, wasn't it? No, it was another room. Well, the last time I was at a roast, it was the Washington Post gathered in the back with all of the so-called mainstream media. I want you to know I am here tonight not as a Republican. I am here this evening as the representative of what Bill Clinton calls hate radio. And believe me, he hates what he hears on the radio. When I saw all the empty seats up here, I thought they were reserved for your friends and they couldn't find anybody. Sit up here, Pat. When I got the invitation for this, I told Pat I would be late getting here because I had to come for the show, and he said, don't worry about it, this is a Republican function, it won't start on time anyway. And it didn't. It was also the eve of St. Patrick's Day, and I thought initially that was the reason for it, but then I suddenly noticed it is also the Ides of March. Julius Caesar would have something to say about that. But I would guess that another prominent military historical figure besides Caesar might have been the model for Pat. It was Machiavelli who wrote what I would consider to be the Pat Mullins slogan, quote, "'Tis better to be feared than loved." I must tell you, I took the time to actually go through and dig up some of the things that your friends have said about you over the years. I have here a small pile of press clippings. Now that I am in the media, now I are one, I thought it would be useful to go through and just kind of give people a sense for what you've been and what you've done to us. I got these clippings out of the service because it struck me that Pat could always be counted upon to come up with a pithy comment. That, by the way, is not something from the last roast. Pithy is spelled P-I-T-H-Y. Thank you. I was trying to be politically correct. County GOP says no to campaign. This from the Times community newspapers. Mullins, hearing a Virginia Democrat leader talking about cleaning up the campaign process is a bit like hearing Jack the Ripper say he wants to visit the hospital to bandage his victims. In their own words, they shall be known. This from some other rag. Here's what your friends and admirers have to say. Quote, "The party's organization is clearly not that strong. The Democrats out-organized the Republicans," said Representative, Tom Davis, excuse me. Lost my head. It is the grand old party, isn't it? I want to save this one. From the sublime to the ridiculous. I'm not making this up. This is in the press. This is in the record. It must be true. It was printed. This shows Pat's affection for right-wing goons, talk show hosts, and the like. And I say this with great affection for the man who talked me into doing talk radio, Sandy Liddy's dad. In Tuesday's elections, Dewey Bond, a Great Falls resident and 6-year member of the board, has been targeted for defeat by none other than GOP Prince of Darkness, Chairman Pat Mullins. The GOP slate is trying to oust Bond, includes Sandy Liddy Bourne, whose father is a Watergate conspirator and a nationally syndicated radio talk show host, G. Gordon Liddy. So much for your friends, Mullins. This from the Washington Times, excuse me. A quote from Patrick Mullins: "I want to nominate for the Senate a man who has done a lot for Virginia, a man who loves his wife, a man who has done a lot to keep drugs out of Virginia. I want to nominate for the United States Senate Chuck Robb." Mullins' head in sand. This is an editorial, so you know you've gained the affection of the people who really count. Quote, "Pat Mullins, who has clearly got his head buried in the sand like an ostrich. Be it known that the Fairfax Republican Party is the pro-life party in this county. We're not going to let unwise liberal policies legislated by Democrat legislatures destroy our fine schools and our quality of life. That wasn't quite as pithy as some of the other things you've said, but you're right on the mark. This from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Election quote of the day, Fairfax County Republican Chairman Patrick Mullins, quote, "Ollie North is going to Washington to ruffle feathers, and that's not bad. That's what the people who support him want him to do." Remarkable political perspicacity and prognostication. How did he know I was going to get a talk show? GOP calls for grand jury over facsimile. This was Pat's little soiree into the legal system, taking that great law degree of yours to great use. D. Patrick Mullins, chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Party, will ask at a news conference today for a federal investigation of potential illegal campaign practices of Ms. Byrne and her congressional office, according to news releases from Mullins. You notice how far that one got. It's still pending, isn't it? That's more on Leslie Byrne. Out of line. D. Patrick Mullins, chairman of the Republican Party, deserves a Bronx cheer for sicking 3 young henchmen on national GOP radio. Reporter Nina Totenberg, excuse me, got it backwards. Nina Totenberg during the GOP convention. The young guns followed Totenberg, yelling, "Nina, Nina, have you had an affair?" Because Mullins thought Totenberg had asked President Bush the infamous question, "Have you had an affair?" Oops, Totenberg didn't ask the question of Bush. A CNN reporter did. But Pat, I know how difficult it is to keep those liberals apart. They all look the same. I know, I are one. I'm right there with them. And again, in the pithy comment category, the latest threat to the GOP Senate race in Virginia comes from the head of the Fairfax County Republican Committee, who has warned he will oust any party officials who publicly backs J. Marshall Coleman's independent campaign. Asked for a comment, Mullins said, "This is not a purge." Oh my, well, I tell you, actually the nicest one of all is from all of your friends at the Vienna Times-Mirror that are going to miss you and Jackie so much. This one is an apt description of what a terrible person he really is. I just quote to you briefly. Fairfax County's Republican Chairman Patrick Mullins prays to Jesus on Sunday. There's 10 demerits right there, buddy. Some Republicans are upset with the chairman. News to me. Mullins got national trashed in the media last month for remarks he made about gays at a roast for former Republican Rep. Stan Paris, who I noticed did not have the nerve to show up here this evening. You got a lot of nerve sitting next to me, Blackwell. You're in trouble already. Mullins, 55, a West Virginia native, who got a degree at Columbia University under a full scholarship. How about that? Now we've gotten to the depth of it. A full scholarship. Offers no apologies for using his clout to get things done. Mullins isn't big on apologies or regrets. Good for him. Mullins ties in with the business community with Mogul, Williams, and other well-heeled Republicans have paid off at fundraising time. As chairman, Mullins controls a special, we want a full investigation. You getting this on tape? Do it. As chairman, Mullins controls a special emergency fund rumored to contain as much as $100,000. If Mullins has his way, certain Democrats will be on the losing side in the ballot's next election. Representative Leslie Byrne, Democrat 11th, and Delegate Rob Hull, Democrat 38th, are at the top of his hit list. Mullins has dismissed suggestions that he's a right-wing extremist. Why would you do that? He points to his Ivy League education and his law degree from George Washington University, not to mention his occupation, if you can call standing around horses. Let me tell you the only thing I've learned from about horses from Pat Mullins. Pat Mullins once told me, "Son, you never learn anything the second time you're kicked by a horse." Thank you very much. What a great help. Mullins is pro-life, another indictment. He opposes gun control. Asked for a comment, another pithy comment from Pat Mullins. Here it is. It's in print. It must be true. "I'm not as bad as everybody thinks I am." Go figure. I actually had a few nice things to say about you, and I can't find them in this mess I've left at the podium. I'm going to leave this whole thing for you. Kevin, I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. First of all, we're in the midst of a very, very rough and tumble primary season. I want to remind all of my Republican friends, as I do frequently on the radio, that it's Ronald Reagan was right when he called it the 11th commandment, speak no ill of another Republican unless you're at a roast for Pat Mullins. Just a thoughts on the last page of Pat Mullins' tenure. 39 out of 68 Republicans on ballots since 1990 have won, a 57% success rate. Amen. There are 20 Republicans that represent Fairfax County, once my home. On the Board of Supervisors, in the General Assembly, and in Congress, 9 more than when he took over the county GOP. Pat has rebuilt the county's Republican committee, which had 218 vacancies when he became chairman. And yes, indeed, notwithstanding the slush fund he's now been accused of, in 1990, the party had $45,000 in the Treasury, and in 1995, it had $200,000. It has been my great pleasure to call Pat Mullins a friend. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Sandy Liddy Bourne. Sandy, you'll remember, served us proud last year as the Republican nominee against Delegate Toddy Puller, or as Pat Mullins has said many times, Toady Puller. Today, she's also elected member of the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Board, so please let her sling a little bit of mud Pat's way. Sandy Liddy Bourne.
As many of you know, I am a political neophyte. At least I was when I first came into Fairfax County. And when I wanted to get involved and I wanted to run for the Soil and Water Office, I was working up in Old Town. And the advice that I received was, you need to meet the chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Party. And I said, well, who's that? We don't know. It's a crazy man from West Virginia. So I saw it and I looked for him and I met him and I introduced myself to him and I said, I'm very angry about a dirt pile in my backyard and I'm going to run for the Soil and Water Office. And he said, oh, you are you? And I said, yes, I am, and I'm going to win. Oh, you are you? And I said, yes. Well, I won. And he asked me about the Soil and Water Office, and I said, well, you know, I sit next to Gene Packard. And he said, Gene Packard? He's the former chairman of Fairfax County Board of Supervisors? And I said, yes. And he said, you know, Sandy, she and I are really good friends. And I said, you are? And he said, yes, would you please, next time you see her, tell her that I said hello. She and we've known each other for years. So I went to the next meeting, and I met her, and I said, Jean, Pat says hello. And she says, Pat who? I said, Pat Mullins. Well, she turned red. Her eyeglasses steamed up. And she said, Pat Mullins? And I said, yes, he told me you were very good friends. I haven't spoken to that man in 13 years. We are not good friends. He keeps telling everyone we're good friends. So I was beginning to learn a little bit about Pat Mullins. I then went up to talk to him. Whenever I meet people and I get to know them, I look in their eyes and I you know, particularly if they're chairman of county parties, to see if there's a drug-induced glaze. And there was no, his eyes were clear, and I said, gee, you know, Pat, you have the eyes of a fox. Well, he tucked his tummy in, swelled up his shoulders, and he said, why, no one's ever called me a fox before. And I let him walk away thinking that. But you know, Pat, I hate to burst your bubble, but I meant to say you were sly and cunning, like your good friend, Gene Packard. I shall miss your leadership. You have been a very good friend. You have given me very good advice. And for the next chairman, please take notice. Pull us together. Give us the good leadership that Pat has given us. Thank you, Pat.
Our next roaster, get ready, is the indefatigable Frank Meeks. There's a big word for you. Frank, as you know, is the owner of about 579 Domino's pizza franchises in the Washington, D.C. area and Louisa County. And he has a lot in common with Pat because Pat is from West Virginia and Frank is just right behind him in second place. Frank, as you may know, is from Mississippi. Frank, come on up.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and I promise to deliver my remarks on time or you all get $3 off. If we could bring the house lights down for video purposes, and besides, none of us really want to be seen in public with Pat Mullins. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here in my permanently pizza sauce stained hands the top 10 reasons why it is good that Pat Mullins is stepping down as our chairman. Number 10, it's been embarrassing having a chairman whose son knows more about politics than he does. Number 9, no more Republican political events need to be scheduled around horse races and Maryland basketball games. Number 8, no more Saturday traffic jams with police helicopters around Falls Church High School. And no more embarrassment of our county chairman comparing himself to great national political leaders, someone like a U.S. senator.
Mr. Chairman, two most important words, thank you. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to publicly, in front of many Republicans, say how much I appreciate our friendship and the good, strong, tough advice you've given me through the years. We have many things in common. Virginia countryside, the horses, the love of the whole state. And yes, Mr. Chairman, we both indulge in a good deal of controversy. But I want to thank you again for your good, stern advice and how you deal it out, and the fact that when you gave me the good tongue lashing now and then, the smile never left your face. We're proud of you, and stand by, as we say in the military. We're just putting you in the reserve force, and someday we may recall you. But in the meantime, good luck and enjoy yourself with your lovely family.
John Warner and I have known each other for a long time. John Warner is a friend of mine, and I know John Warner very well. But John Warner, you're no Pat Mullins.
Reason number six, no more embarrassment of our chairman yelling at national political reporters on the floor of the Republican National Convention. Nina, have you had an affair? Sam, you stupid damn liberal, you. Number 5, I will no longer feel pressured to give the Mullins family 10 free Domino's pizzas every week. Number 4, Pat will now have more time to lobby political leaders with whom he has influence on what must be the most important aspect of the new contract with America.
The new contract with America is going to be really vital. And the fact is, when you come down to it, it's got to be Domino's.
Hey, it's got to be Domino's.
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 Looking good, Domino's. Looking good, Domino's.
Lorena said, any way you cut it, I like Pat Mullins. And I went to Congressman Tom Davis and said, Tom, can you use your influence with anybody to convince them of the importance of Domino's Pizza? Who's the one person Tom could convince?
Here in Washington, everyone knows it's got to be Domino's.
Tom was real upset when he was elected congressman because I had to tell him, sir, I cannot take your check anymore. We stopped taking checks from congressmen 4 years ago. Number 3, we need a chairman who can actually say one complete sentence that makes sense without beginning it with the term, good gosh. Number two, it's been embarrassing having a county chairman with more frequent flyer points than Hazel O'Leary. And the number one reason why it's good that Pat Mullins is stepping down is because we need a chairman who can actually pick more winning candidates who can win and not be such a drag on them. Think about it. Harity, Paris, Williams, North, Berger, McConnell, Jones.
We're gearing up for next year's campaign, and I'm not even going to admit that I know Pat Mullins.
Pat Mullins, as you know, in 1988, you were not county chairman. And in that year, I was elected vice president of the United States. In 1990, you were elected county chairman. And in 1992, George Bush and I